Welcome to Corvette Today, the podcast that talks about everything Corvette, with your host Steve Garrett, MC and DJ at one of the largest Corvette weekends in the country, Corvette Fun Fest, president of the Corvette Club of Kansas City, Missouri, and radio disc jockey at the #1 radio station in Kansas City for over 40 years. Here's Steve Garrett.
Hey, thanks for listening to Corvette Today, the podcast that talks about everything Corvette. I'm your host, Steve Garrett. I appreciate you tuning in. You can listen to Corvette Today on all podcast platforms like iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Anchor.fm, Pandora, Stitcher, Audible, and many more. You can also listen on your smart device. Just say, Alexa or Hey Google, play the podcast called Corvette Today, and you're connected. Also, visit the Corvette Today website. It's CorvetteTodayPodcast.com. You can also sign up for Corvette Today notifications, updates, and information at CorvetteToday.ck.page. And don't forget, join the Corvette Today Facebook group. We have over 2,300 members, and I'd love to have you as a member as well. First, I'd like to thank our flagship sponsors of Corvette Today, MidEngineCorvetteForum.com. If you'd like to join a new, vibrant forum that focuses on the new mid-engine C8 Corvette, it's free to join this friendly community. You'll meet a lot of fellow Corvette enthusiasts like yourself at MidEngineCorvetteForum.com. Also, a new flagship sponsor of Corvette Today is Ctr America. They're the OE supplier for chassis components for the C6 through C8 Corvette. Ctr America also provides various aftermarket products like suspension and steering parts. They work with customers that have their own specs, unique designs, and requirements. The CTR Enhanced R&D process provides cutting-edge solutions, superior quality, and lightweight yet functional products, including EV products. CTR has brought to the aftermarket the same know-how developed as an OEM supplier. Visit the CTR America website and learn more at aftermarket.ctr.co.kr. Another new flagship sponsor of Corvette Today is E-Tech. E-Tech is the expert and leader in custom flooring. Whether it's your garage floor, basement, patio, or front steps of your home, or a professional workplace, E-Tech is 4 times stronger than epoxy and comes with a 15-year warranty. There are hundreds of different patterns to choose from, and installation is completed in 1 day. You can walk on your floor in 24 hours. Call for a free estimate at 913-745-3732 or visit etechcustomcoatings.com, 913-745-3732 or etekcustomcoatings.com. I have my garage floor done with E-Tech and absolutely love it, and I know you'll love yours. You can see the pictures of it on my blog at CorvetteTodayPodcast.com. And a shout out to CanadianCorvetteForum.com, welcoming Corvette enthusiasts from around the world. My guest on Corvette Today is a walking encyclopedia of Corvette and Chevrolet. He's written books called Corvette by the Numbers and Chevrolet by the Numbers. He is one of the nation's top collector car experts. He was also the editor of a magazine called Corvette Fever. Well, that magazine folded, but now Alan has revived the publication. He's the owner, and Corvette Fever lives again. As a matter of fact, later on in the Corvette Today podcast, you'll have a chance to win a subscription to Corvette Fever magazine. Meet Alan Colvin. Alan, welcome to Corvette Today.
Hey, Steve. It's so great to be on your show. Heard a lot about it. I guess you're in this deal for about a year now, and it's just awesome. Really looking forward to reaching out to the Corvette people out there and talking about what's great about this industry.
I'm glad to have you on, and we want to talk about Corvette Fever magazine and give away some subscriptions. But let's talk about your early years first, Alan. You grew up in Kentucky. When did you realize you were a car guy?
Well, really, in actuality, I wasn't the one that realized it. My mom basically kept everything, every toy that I ever played with, etc., and she saved every piece of paper I think I ever drew on. And she told me one time that the first legible thing that I ever drew was a car.
Wow.
So I guess I've had oil in my veins since I was born. 2 or 3 years old, I've always been fascinated by automobiles.
That's very cool. Hey, talk about the time when you saw your first Corvette and knew that was your car.
You know, it's sort of interesting. I was raised in, a little town in Kentucky. I think there was like one Corvette Corvette in town, maybe 2 at the most at any given time.
Wow.
Even though we did have a Chevy dealership, but they sold mostly pickup trucks and Camaros and such like that. It was later in life where the first Corvette I remember seeing was a split window coupe, 63 split window.
Yep.
And that's still my favorite car. The uniqueness of it being a split window, 1 year only. I've just always loved that car. In fact, I ended up finding a watch that I wore for years and years and years. It was a split window coupe. I think it was a Fossil watch that they had made special, and so I got one of those and wore it for years and years. And so I think that's always been my favorite Corvette. It was later on where I was really starting to be around them more as I got older.
Wow. I would love to find that Fossil watch because just like you, Alan, my first wow moment with Corvette was that 63 split window. I would love to have one of those Fossil watches. That would be so cool.
I'll send you what I have on it. I'll send you a picture of it. Maybe you can find it on eBay. They say everything's there.
That would be so cool. So do you own a Corvette now, Alan? What's currently in your garage?
I've owned a couple of Corvettes. I bought the first one as a project car, Project C5X. We worked with Mid-America Motor Works. We did 16 articles when I was at Corvette Fever, the original Corvette Fever. We ended up selling that car. Then I bought another one. My wife never got to drive that, the 2001 C5, and it was a stick. And my wife never got to drive it, and so after that car went down the road to a new owner, it was actually given away at Fun Fest one year.
Wow.
I got another 2001. It was an automatic. So my wife was finally able to drive the car, and she really loved it. She's real pretty blonde, so she looked really good in it.
I bet she did. As a matter of fact, it's the same way with my wife. My wife cannot drive a stick, and my C7 is a 7-speed, so she can't drive it. But I need to get her into a Corvette that's an automatic as well.
Yep. I'm looking forward as the magazine progresses. I'm going to get some type of a project car, whether it's a C2 or a C6 or a C5 again. I'm going to get into one here pretty soon again.
Very nice. Now, you're an accomplished magazine writer. You've been doing that for 35 years, Alan. Talk about your writing career and what magazines you've written for.
I started out, I went to school to be an engineer, a civil engineer, and I did that for about 10 years. But I was always dabbling in cardom. I thought, well, maybe I could write some articles. And so I bought a Nikon camera and started to go to different car shows and pull different cars out to be able to shoot. And so then I was able to have something to sell. I always liked how-to. And so I did some how-to stuff. I was sort of a numbers guy, numbers matching guy.
Sure.
The list is sort of long, but I obviously wrote for Corvette Fever. I wrote for them as a columnist and did a few articles for them on monthly transmissions prior to me coming on board as the editor. I wrote for, Super Chevy, Muscle Car Review. I wrote for Vet Views for years and years and years. Corvette and Chevy Trader. I wrote for them for years. Mustang Trader. I did some high-performance Pontiac articles, Automotive Restore, Pontiac Enthusiast, Old Cars Weekly, Chevy High Performance, and then also CorvetteMagazine.com, which was done by the Walkers and Zip Products.
Alan, that's an impressive list of car and Corvette magazines. What were some of your favorite articles that you like to write about?
I always like to find really rare stuff. I always like to write about things that most people didn't really know existed. When I was doing my research for my books, I uncovered the proof of the 1965 M22 prototype transmission, the Rock Crusher transmission. They only built 57 of them, and I was able to nail all that down with the production totals from the Muncie transmission plant. So I've always been told, even though I've done feature work and stuff like that, it's mostly rarity. Rarity sort of drives my spirit. I've always tried to come up with that or trying to educate people. What's correct, what's right. And so I've used some of the content that I've created over the years from my books, my book projects. That's where I ended up.
That's very cool. And you also owned a company called Colvin Media Group. Talk about CMG and what they did too.
That was when I was freelancing. I was living in Dayton, Ohio at the time. I had lots of guys in the industry that, I was fooling around with drag racers and circle track racers, and I sort of ran in those circles. And so I got the opportunity to start doing some catalog work. I did a few posters for Ohio George Montgomery.
Cool.
The only poster that's ever been done of his gasser. And so I started continuing to pick up work like that. So I ended up hiring several people underneath of me and made a Colvin Media Group. We were able to do a lot of catalog work and that kind of thing, catalog copy, advertising, those kinds of things.
That's very cool. So you have a really well-rounded background in automotive.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
You bet. Alan, let's take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the businesses that you've owned and also the books that you've written on Corvette Today.
American Hydrocarbon, your one-stop shop for custom interior, exterior, and engine bay items for your C4 through C8 Corvette. We can help you create a custom look for your Corvette with carbon fiber or 10 different color patterns and styles. We've served customers in over 28 countries all around the world. Whether it's a custom-made engine cover for your new C8 mid-engine Corvette or custom-made C4 interior upgrades, American Hydrocarbon can help you transform your Corvette into a best-in-class show car. Our products have been featured in Vette and Corvette magazines, so give us a call. 813-476-5638. That's 813-476-5638. Visit our website at AmericanHydrocarbon.com or email us at pat@AmericanHydrocarbon.com. Let us help you make your Corvette the car you've always wanted it to be. American Hydrocarbon.
Hey, honey, are you awake?
I am now.
I can't sleep. Since turning 50, I keep dreaming of a red door and a blue door, somehow knowing there are only choices for retirement.
Okay.
Through the red door, we outlive our money. We have to rely on our kids. We're stuck on a fixed income. It's terrifying.
Yeah, that would suck.
But through the blue door, our money outlives us. We retire on our terms. Our kids stay our kids, not our caretakers. We make work optional.
Yes, that's much better. That's what I want too. But what do we do?
We call True Wealth & Company at 913-653-8783. They specialize in helping successful people make work optional. They're our fiduciary Blue Door personal wealth managers.
Hey, where are you going? It's 3 a.m.
I can't sleep. I'm going to check out True Wealth & Company online at retirewithtrue.com. That Blue Door is going to be our retirement.
913-653-8783. Visit us online at retirewithtrue.com. Investment advice offered through True Wealth & Company, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Kansas.
And now, back to Corvette Today with your host and my husband, Steve Garrett.
Hey, thanks for listening to Corvette Today. I'm your host, Steve Garrett. With me today is Alan Colvin, the new owner of Corvette Fever magazine. In this second segment, we're going to talk about some of the other books that Alan has written, also some of the companies he's owned. Now, Alan, you owned a nationally known Chevy reproduction parts company called C&C Automotive Reproductions. Talk about that real quick, because that's some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, I was a Camaro guy a lot in my life.
Right.
I've owned a Z20, 69 Z28. I've owned a big block 396 4-speed SS car. And so I was always into Camaros. And so I decided, well, maybe there's some parts out there. This was really early. This was like 82, 83, 84. And I thought, well, I wouldn't mind starting a company and maybe I could do some reproduction stuff. So I had some friends at General Motors. At the time, they didn't have a system where you could go to equity management and be able to pull prints the way that General Motors would want you to. So anyway, I was able to get the prints out of GM for the chambered exhaust.
Wow.
The chambered exhaust was offered on the 69 Z28 as an option. Well, it was originally an OEM for some of the cars early in the model year. And then it was always optional for cars that didn't come on from the factory as an OE installation. Mm-hmm. But I was able to meet a guy who had a large car collection. I was able to raise the money to be able to build the tooling. I went to a Tier 3 supplier in Ohio for exhaust systems that was supplying General Motors at the time. We were able to build a complete chambered exhaust. I came up with all the hangers for it. I came up with all the hardware, researched all of that. It was a great project. We sold thousands of them at the time, and I built it out of 409, 072 wall 409 stainless and then the internal tube is crimped, right? It's a 3-inch muffler that's crimped. There's 2 that are underneath the floorboard that run down the drive shaft, and then there's 2 behind that takes the place of the transverse muffler. And then there's an internal tube inside that crimped 3-inch tube, and so I actually manufactured that internal tube in 304 stainless, and they're still out there on the road. I get contacted all the time. Hey, I still got your chambered exhaust on my car. It still sounds like the day it was built.
That's amazing. That's great.
Here we are 30, 40 years later.
Now, you also wrote a 4-part book series called Chevrolet by the Numbers. Talk about that book series, and is that still available?
Oh, yeah, it's still available. In fact, I sell them direct to the public off of my website, alancolvin.com. Like I said, I was an engineer. I'd just gotten married. I was on a big engineering job that came to an end, and so I was laid off, drawing some unemployment, and I always carried around this little book, and I talk about this in the introduction of all those books, of how the whole project started, and it would write down and research and write down, and so if I was looking for parts, I would go to swap meets and car shows around Ohio within a couple-hour radius, went to Carlisle several times, and I would always carry that little book around with me. And people would always see that I was looking up, keeping track of what I was doing and what I was looking for. I had one guy offer me like $500 for this little bound book in my hand one time. He says, I don't care. I've got the money right here. I'll pay you for it right now.
Oh, my gosh.
I can't do that, dude, because this is the only one I've got. But it just sort of got me thinking about, well, maybe it is really needed, that people really need to know what's really was installed on these cars. And so that started a several-year process. It started out as being one book, and I was able to finally get clearance to be able to go inside General Motors, go inside the Tonawanda engine plant, the Flint engine plant, the Muncie transmission plant, the Delco Remy plant in Indiana. I went to all these plants and was able to pull all these records out that would verify, okay, what is the original drivetrain for all Chevy vehicles from 1955 through 1975. That's what I did. And so that one book turned into 4, and then later on, I wrote Corvette by the Numbers by itself.
And let's talk about Corvette by the Numbers. That came out in 2002. Talk about the awards that book received as well, and that can still be purchased too. Isn't that correct?
That's right. Yep. All 5 of my books are still in print. They're selling really well. I've actually, since 1992, when the first books were sold, I've sold over 130,000 copies of those books. I think the number now, I'm over 6,000 for Corvette by the Numbers.
Wow.
But it took a while. My wife says that everything when I was writing these books revolved around writing the books. I was working part-time. I worked part-time for Airborne once, and I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and work until 1, get home by 2, work till 11 or 12, and get up and do it all over again.
Wow.
She said it was like I was in medical school. And so after the 4 were done and I finished the last one, the Corvette book, she said, we can't do this ever again. You know, you're going to have to find a new place to live if you do another one. So I took the hint and said, well, I won't do any more.
That's funny. That's a great story, though, you know. Alan, you've been involved in a lot of car clubs. Talk about some of the car clubs you've been in over your years.
Well, I was involved with the National Monte Carlo Owners Association because I owned an SS Monte Carlo, 70 SS Monte Carlo at one time. I was a member of the Society of Automotive Historians. I got involved with them because of them being record seekers and trying to save the history of the automobile. The United States Camaro Club, I was in it. I was like their first 10 people that joined that. That was based out of Dayton, Ohio, which is where I was living at the time. And so I wrote articles for them. Jim Worth from Worth and Associates actually started the club, and so I was with them. American Chevelle and Susie Society, ACES, that was started by a friend of mine, Chuck Hansen, who used to be on TV. It was one of the first automotive shows on television. He had that club for quite a long time. National Corvette Restore Society, I was a member of them for years and years, sharing information, pulling information from their judging manuals, verifying that what I was pulling out of General Motors. And when I was writing my books, I was making sure that I had it right. But there were some things that I figured out that weren't necessarily correct in their judging manuals. It was just part of the process. I was also in the 65, 66 full-size Chevy Club. I was a senior judge and advisor for many of those clubs. It's been a great ride. I haven't been as involved as much in the last few years, but I've been in a lot of clubs and done a lot of work with them.
You sure have. Well, Alan, let's take our last break. And in the segment number 3, we're going to talk about Corvette Fever magazine, how you brought it back, and we're going to give away some subscription to the publication coming up next on Corvette Today.
VetteFinders.com is the Internet's original Corvette classified ads website, with classified ads starting at just $25, and every ad runs until your Corvette is sold. If you're in the market for a Corvette, VetteFinders.com has over 500 Corvettes for sale from all around the USA and Canada and covering all 8 generations. Visit VetteFinders.com, the Internet's destination for buying and selling Corvettes. That's VETTE Finders.com.
KC Trends Motorsports has been the Midwest's largest custom wheel superstore for over 25 years. They specialize in C8 wheel fitments from the top brands in the industry, like HRE, Vossen, ADV1, Avant-Garde, and more. They ship daily from their Kansas City location to all upper 48 states with the best pricing and inventory in the country. Need tires? KC Trends Motorsports has you covered. They have tires in stock from Michelin and Pirelli. Plus, they can help you with a customized wheel and tire combo for your Corvette to truly make it one of a kind. And if you need wheel ideas, no problem. Simply go online to kctrends.com for their car and wheel visualizer. See the wheels on your Corvette before you purchase. Also, there's dozens of wheels and tire combo pictures to look through online to spur your imagination. And their expert staff is there to help you with wheel and tire sizing and offsets for your C6, C7, and C8 Corvette. Visit them online at kctrends.com. See them on Facebook and Instagram. Make any Corvette a one-of-a-kind with KC Trends Motorsports. Call them toll-free, 877-962-5200. KC Trends Motorsports.
You're listening to the Corvette Today podcast with Steve Garrett.
Hey, thanks for listening to Corvette Today, the podcast that talks about everything Corvette. I'm your host, Steve Garrett. With me today on the podcast is Alan Colvin, the publisher and owner of Corvette Fever magazine. Alan, you were once the editor of this publication. Talk about that time and what happened to that publication when you were editor.
I was actually writing Resto Clinic as a contributor. At the time, this was in 2000, 2001, 2002, we decided I was working for another company. It was high stress. And so my wife said, we need to get out of here. And so let's go to Florida. I was writing for several magazines, Vet Fuse as well at the time. And so I thought, well, let's go to Florida and chill out. And maybe we can have dinner or something with somebody at one of the magazines and maybe be able to write some of this off. And so that's exactly what happened. I went to dinner with one of the executives, which was with Prime Media. Corvette Fever had been sold. It was in the Prime Media portfolio. And so went to dinner, had no expectation of anything other than having a great time. And during that dinner, the executive said, would you consider throwing your hat into the ring to take Ronnie Hartman's place as editor? And I was dumbfounded. I had no idea what was going on. And we sort of walked out and looked at each other after the dinner. I said, well, sure, I definitely would consider anything. And so we walked out of there. That ended up working out. We were able to, in 2004, I was able to come to Florida and take over the editorship of Corvette Fever. And it was definitely a great move for me.
Obviously, the publication has been gone for a little while, but you've recently revived the magazine. Talk about the details of that and the restart and what your mission is for this edition of Corvette Fever magazine.
Yeah, that's been 11, 12 years ago. And as these other magazines have shut down, basically everything's gone. The portfolio when I was with Corvette Fever was over 70 magazines, and basically all those are gone except maybe one. Magazine industry's totally changed. The landscape is totally different. And so just got to a point where I thought, you know what? Maybe there is a possibility that I can get control of the trademark and relaunch Corvette Fever. And so I started making some phone calls, got an intellectual properties attorney. We were able to get control of that trademark. And so I'm super excited about it because we have a totally different business model now. It's digital, and yet it's also a printed magazine. I'm just super excited. We launched 3 weeks ago, maybe. We're having a great response.
That's fantastic. Now, talk about the different subscriber options that you do have for Corvette Fever, Alan.
We have a digital subscription. The actual proprietary software that we're using, you can go online. It'll actually look at the magazine on any digital machine as far as a tablet, a phone, a PC. It automatically adjusts to whatever you're using. I have a free option that you will be able to look at the digital flip book. You'll be able to look at past digital flip books, and the articles will be abridged in the digital subscription. So there's not going to always be all the content in the digital subscription. The majority of it, probably 60 or 70% will be there. Then we have a 1-year subscription option, which is a paid subscription for $65. You'll get the same digital flip book. You'll get access to the past digital flip books as we publish them. You'll have full-length article access, and we'll do a quarterly printed publication and some swag, some decals and that kind of thing come with that first-year subscription. The printed publication is going to be the best cover, the best paper. It's probably going to be at least 200, possibly even 300 pages long every quarter. If you go for a 2-year subscription, like I said, it's all the same up until the point where now you're going to just push those printed publications out. You'll get 8 of those, and you'll get the decals, the C1 through C8 decals, and you'll get an embroidered hat, which the discount is $31 discount for $99 for a 2-year subscription. And amazingly, we've had quite a few people sign up so far, and amazingly, most of the people that are signing up for a paid subscription are going for the $99 2-year subscription, which, I don't know, maybe we're giving away a great hat, so maybe that's what's driving it. But I choose to believe that people know who I am. They know that we're going to do a great job with the content. We're setting new standards. We're plowing new ground here. I choose to believe that they believe in where we're going and where we're headed, and we're going to have a great product.
Alan, that's fantastic. And talk about your social media links as well, because Corvette Fever is on all social media too.
That's right. Yeah, we've got a current Facebook group that we've just launched. We're going to be going it into Instagram pretty soon.
That's fantastic. Well, let's give away 3 2-year subscriptions to the print product, Corvette Fever magazine. So here's what you need to do. All you have to do is email me at steve@corvettetodaypodcast.com, and you'll be entered to win one of these 3 subscriptions. So we have till Friday of this week to get that done. So all you have to do is give me your contact information and email me at steve@corvettetodaypodcast.com, and you'll be in the running for one of our 3 subscriptions, a 2-year subscription to Corvette Fever magazine. Alan, I'm real excited to give away these publications with you. Any final thoughts for our listeners to the Corvette Today podcast?
You know, I'm just happy to be back in the game. The best job I ever had was being the editor of Corvette Fever magazine, and now that I have control over it, I'm just super excited. It's going to be a top-shelf product, and if you get the free subscription today, you'll see the quality that we're going to be producing. I'm just happy to be back in the chair. I'm looking forward to seeing old friends. We're going to be doing some shows this year, and I'm looking forward to seeing old friends and new friends out there in Corvette land.
It's great to have Corvette Fever magazine back, just like Corvette Today podcast. It's new, it's fresh, it's unique, and I know that this is going to be a high-end, high-detailed publication, so I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast, and I'm looking forward to working with you in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for being on Corvette Today, Alan.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Corvette Today, and thanks to our sponsors, Ctr America, who makes chassis components for the C6, C7, and C8 Corvette. Visit their aftermarket items online at aftermarket.ctr.co.kr. Also, American Hydrocarbon at americanhydrocarbon.com and KC Trends Motorsports at kctrends.com. And don't forget E-Tech Custom Coatings at etekcustomcoatings.com or call 913-745-3732.
You've been listening to Corvette Today with Steve Garrett. If you'd like to contact Steve with any thoughts on the podcast or ideas for guests on Corvette Today, you can email him at stevegarrettdj@gmail.com. That's stevegarrettdj@gmail.com. Garrett has 2 R's and 2 T's. Or connect with Steve on social media on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram using @SteveGarrettDJ. Thanks again for listening to Corvette Today.